All right, hello everybody. So today we are going to cover um, congruent figures and transforming them all over a coordinate grid. Um, so this includes rotations, reflections, and translations usually. So over here we have all of our definitions. So to translate a shape, we're just going to move it up, down, left, or right. It's very simple, and I'm sure you've all done this before. Rotate something is to take the shape and turn it around in a circular motion. And we're going to discuss how we do this on Geometers Sketchpad. And then also reflecting something. Reflecting something is just like looking in a mirror. When you put a piece of paper up to a mirror, all of the words turn backwards. So that is exactly what happens with a shape. So we are going to discuss the difference between similar and congruent shapes. Similar shapes are the same shape, just one is usually bigger than the other one, or one is smaller than the other one, depending on how you look at it. And then congruent means they're exactly the same shape, even if they might be turned around and rotated and translated and reflected. And then we are going to look at all of these shapes on a coordinate plane and how they relate to the point of origin. So I want you to open up Geometers Sketchpad, and I'm going to create a new Sketchpad here. Alrighty, so your screen probably looks like this. If you have a welcome to Sketchpad thing, you can just click out of it and it'll disappear. So the first thing we're gonna do is go up here to the Graph tab, and we're gonna say define coordinate system, and that'll give us this grid here. It gives us 2 points. We don't really need these points, so you can either right click and hide unit point, or you can just leave it there. That is perfectly okay. But this point right here is the point of origin. This is where the x-axis and the y-axis meet. So we are actually going to create a polygon on this grid. So how we're going to do that is going to go right over here to this polygon tool. We're just going to click on it, and now our little mouse, we can click anywhere and it'll give us a point. And I'm going to create a right triangle. You can create whichever kind of polygon you want. It can have as many different points as you want. Alrighty, so when you are finished creating your polygon, make sure you double click, otherwise you get this awkward guy that keeps wanting to make a bigger polygon. So just make sure you double click on that last one and it'll select it for you. So then after we're done, we're going to click this arrow up here. That's to deselect the polygon tool, because otherwise when you click around, you're going to start creating more polygons, and that's just a giant mess. So now we have this polygon here, and if you look at your worksheet, we're going to transform it into several different positions. So when we go ahead and select it, it'll give us a little grid here that tells us it's selected. And we're going to go up here to transform. All right. And then we're going to go down here and it says translate. So we're just going to follow the worksheet. You don't have to do exactly what I'm doing. However, I would suggest you follow along for this first part, and then you can just go off and explore. So this way you know that you're doing it right. All right. So when we click translate, it gives us this little dialog box. And we're going to say, so fixed distance, this is how far it's going to move. So we're going to move it 5 centimeters, and then at a fixed angle of 90 degrees. So that just means which direction it's going. So 90 degrees is up, 180 degrees is this way, 270 degrees would be down, and then 0 degrees would be over this way, which directly relates to the unit circle. Alrighty, so then we're just going to press translate, and look, it appeared way up there. All right, and now we're going to keep this shape selected, and we're going to reflect it across the y-axis. So whenever we're reflecting or rotating something, we have to define what we want to reflect or rotate it around. So in order to do that, we can double click and those random little squares appear to tell us that that is where it's going to go across. So if I wanted it to reflect across the x-axis, I could double click there and it'll tell me it's going there. But we do just want the y-axis. Alrighty, so now we're going to go back up to transform and we're going to go to reflect, and there it goes. It didn't even give us a dialog box that time. All right, so then our next step is to translate by 8 centimeters. So we're going to do the exact same thing that we did before, translate. We're going to do 8 centimeters this time, but this time instead of 90 degrees, it wants us to do 180 degrees. So instead of going up, this time it went over to the left, and we're going to say translate. So how do we know that it's going 8 centimeters? Because in between here, it looks like there's only 5 little squares in between, but it's from each point. So we have this point here, and it is going 8 centimeters from the respective point over here. So this is 8 centimeters. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, so then our last step is to rotate 180 degrees with the origin as the center. So I think the default is to have the origin at the center, but to just be sure, we're going to double click there and it'll do the little bullseye thing right there. All right, so we're going to go up to transform and rotate. And then it'll give us the dialog box of how many degrees. We want 180. Wow, look at that. It went way over there. All right, so I don't know if you noticed, but up here in the transform section, there was also an option for dilate. So if you ever had your eyes dilated, that means that the doctor comes in and shines a light and makes your pupil bigger or smaller, depending on what he's doing. So when we dilate something, that means that we're creating not a congruent figure, but it's going to be similar. So it's going to be the same shape, just bigger or smaller. So we're not going to do that today because we are working today with just congruent shapes. But if you wanted to create your puzzle with similar shapes instead of congruent shapes, you can specify that and then use this tool. But let's look at if we do this in a different order, would we get from this shape to this shape all the way down here? So let's just do this backwards. We're going to deselect this one, and then we're going to delete these guys so we don't get confused. Oh, it disappeared down here. So we just know that it's somewhere down here. Okay, so we're going to select this shape and then we're going to rotate it 180 degrees around the center. 180 degrees, it already has that selected. We're going to translate 8 centimeters by 180 degrees. It already knows we want to do that. And then we're going to reflect across, across the y-axis. Yes, so that was right. I thought I had selected the x-axis for a second. So yes, reflect. It's over there. And then translate 5 centimeters by 90 degrees. So we're going to do 5 and 90 again. Translate. All right, so now it's up here, and our original one was down here. So it is very important that we make sure we do things in the correct order. So if we're giving directions on the road, we need to make sure that we tell somebody to turn right when they should turn right instead of going straight and then having them turn right because they're on a different road if they go straight first. But now it is your turn to play around. I'll give you, I have an example puzzle that you are trying to get your shape from here to a shape over here or something similar. And I also have different ones where some of them are not even congruent and some of them are similar. So it is your job to figure out what is what and to get your shape to go from here to over here using these steps of translations, reflections, and rotations. So I would like you to write down all your steps on the worksheet that you have. And then after that, after you play around a little bit, tell me if there are multiple solutions to that puzzle. And think of multiple different ways you can get your shape from one place to the other. Maybe I could have reflected it first and then just moved it over. That is a possibility. And then you are going to create your own puzzle for somebody else to follow. So you can either give directions and have them do something like this, or you can follow my puzzle and give them the before and after shape, and they have to figure out the steps. You can be as creative as you want with this. You can create little smiley faces to move around rather than just normal triangles. You can name that little smiley face and tell a story. Be like, oh, this person went all the way up here, and then he went over here to the grocery store, and then he went down here to the park. Get as creative as you want. And now it's your turn to just create and have fun.